Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about, of course, we're looking at the Prime Minister embarking on a 4-day tour to Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, of course, for address regional global issues, also to strengthen bilateral ties between our countries. Of course, in the wake of recent events that we've seen, we'll be talking about these visits and what they will do for Pakistan, and of course the narrative that Pakistan wants to put forward internationally. We'll also be talking about, of course, India and their narrative at this time, where a delegation that is being led by Shashi Tharoor is, of course, in the US, and their stance on mediation. It's certainly interesting the way that Mr. Tharoor seems to think that, and he stated on record that the President of the US its stance on mediation, it seems to have been negated by India. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this development also, and whether the regional issues, the national issues within India, and the fact that they seem to be spilling over out into their overall narrative into the world, and the fact that it seems to at this time lack the kind of clarity at all, any kind of clarity at all. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Ahmed Khan, who is a former ambassador, and then later on we'll be joined by Dr. Adnan Khan, Jauhar Saleem. But let me go to Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan. Jamil Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Jamil Saab, let's, of course, I want to talk about the Prime Minister, the visits by the Prime Minister and his delegation at this time also. And of course, at the outset, when we look at what the Indian delegation is saying as far as the role that the US President has played as far as mediation is concerned between Pakistan and India during this conflict, how do you look at this? Is it self-contradictory? Do you think that it lacks any kind of coherence? What are they trying to say? Is it a step backwards? How do you look at this?
It's really surprising, the narrative which they are trying to negate. The statement of the most powerful president of the most powerful country, who has made statements and has mentioned about 9 times during his 4 days visit to the Middle East. And he has repeatedly and he has reiterated that he's the one who has mediated, and it's because of the U.S. mediation that the ceasefire had taken place. And he mentioned that in a very clear and categorical term. And as I said, 9 different occasions and at 9 different times. So I don't know how a country can really negate that. Although my understanding is that through the back channel diplomacy, India must be requesting US that it changes its entire doctrine of bilateral dispute settlement with Pakistan. Their doctrine is bilateral negotiation, and if they publicly accept that there was a mediation, then that doctrine is negated by itself, and then similar agreement is negated. The Lahore declaration is negated. So I guess these are those factors that India is trying to brush it aside. The very fact which the President Trump has mentioned, as I said so many times. So that is totally one thing which is, I think, which would, I don't know how it would become a laughing stock, that president of the most powerful country is saying that, and how it could be negative. But anyway, they have now launched, Shashi Tharoor. Shashi Tharoor is a good orator, and obviously he is included in the government delegation. So he has to toe the line of the government, and how he's going to present the case and how he's going to negate what has been happening. We'll wait and see how Shashi Tharoor is going to do the advocacy of the narrative which India is trying to build. And we'll also see until what time the United States would, because of its own geopolitical preferences and geopolitical interests in India, to what extent they would keep.
Dr. Jamil, I want to come back and talk more about this, and also, whether, like you said, a country like the US and a president like Donald Trump would be is going to walk back from what has already been said on record. Let me come back to you. We have with us Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan, who is a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Adnan, can you hear me?
Yes, exactly. I can hear you.
Dr. Adnan, we're talking about the ramifications of these statements that are coming from the head of the Indian delegation at this time in the US, Shashi Tharoor, and the role of the US. He's also made certain other comments about the president of the US. How do you look at these? And overall, do you think it's going to be able that India, whatever it's doing in the background, it's going to be able to step away from what was said so publicly and on record by the President of the United States on multiple occasions?
Well, I would say with some kind of assertion that under these circumstances that the United States has not only influence in the whole of the world, but particularly in South Asia, it has the maximum influence on India in terms of that it has strategic depth with it and also a blossoming trade both ways. So in addition to that, you see, they are also in the sequence of United States, Israel and India for largest strategic interest in the whole of the world, but regarding South Asia, particularly to deal with China as well as Pakistan. Now, in this context, I would say, based on whatever experience I have of having studied the Indian foreign policy, that it is just a knee-jerk response at the moment that they are trying to de-link the offer of President Trump regarding the resolution of the water issue as well as the larger Kashmir dispute. And they say that they will be only talking terrorism and that United States may not be a part of it. It would be a bilateral equation. However, at the DGMO level, which is a very serious level, things are moving ahead and de-escalation also is taking place, and that some neutral venue like United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, KSA, is also being discussed for the talk with the, of course, involvement of a mediator, which in this case is none other than the United States of America. So I think that this is the initial euphoria of India. They want to show that they are a very big sovereign country, which they no longer are. Actually, this is a world of shared sovereignty. It is not that just one country would have its own. So it is an interdependent world. India is not an independent in most of the matters, including the security and ideology and economics. So I am very sure that they, for the first time ever in decades, their dialogue with Pakistan ended almost in 2014 when it was a composite integrated dialogue going on in fits and starts, but still it was going on. And after that, they started making Herculean kind of a very negative, in the sense, actions in Kashmir. So after that, you see, the talks broke down. But I am very sure that, keeping in mind that India is not at all that strong militarily, and Pakistan has given them a very befitting lesson which they would not be able to forget for decades to come. And it is now considering itself vulnerable. And the top countries, United States and Europe, and of course Pakistani friends in the Middle East and in the neighborhood, have been, although they were convinced of Pakistani expertise in security, but they have been, in fact, they also have been stunned. So this is a great moment for Pakistan, but one thing is that we must not take the enemy easily and must not take them on the face value. whether it is regarding their statements regarding stopping water, or that they may try to take revenge. So, though DGMO's progress is very
I
good.
think that we must not underestimate India, of course. Let me come back to you on that note. Jamil Saab, Dr. Adnan is saying that there is, as far as India is concerned, whereas de-escalation is taking place even as we speak overall. But do you think it's because their narrative around the world has taken such a severe beating that they feel that they can either, muster up this kind of false bravado or try to change that narrative? And like you said, with all this backdoor diplomacy which must be at play, they're trying to change what, the trajectory of events, the way they happened. The mediation, the offer of it, the way that, our escalation to de-escalate, the actions the way that they happen. Do you think it's an attempt to change the course of events, the way that they've already happened and been recorded?
Well, the entire world had witnessed it. And the basically what happens is, in any country, if the war happens or any major incident happens, that country comes under the spot. In this country, in this case, there were two countries. They both were on the spotlight, under the spotlight of the world. And the world was witnessing the respective ambassadors located in New Delhi and Pakistan, Islamabad. They have already reported all the events. And besides that, their own foreign office of respective countries who are represented in India and Pakistan, they have already reported that. Now, negating that would be impossible in this case, because if we try and connect the dots during this entire war, pre-war and post-war and post-Pelgaham incident, the false flag operation.
Right. There's a problem with audio. Dr. Adnan, do you think that now at this time, when we are also looking at, of course, our delegations also going to visit different countries, going to, of course, put our narrative forward. In this situation at this time, do you think that, as far as the US is concerned, they've taken a clear stance, and whatever, Shashi Thar might say or the delegation might say, do you see it moving forward, the effort there, the attempt there, regardless of whether this is hyperbole or whitewashing the truth or whatever, is being done by him?
Well, this is a very important question. And in response, I'll say that yes, India has been able, quite wrongly, to build a perception about Pakistan and the region and in the world that probably the militants regarding Kashmir not only are in the occupied Kashmir, but they have sanctuaries in Pakistan also. Some incidents also took place, but none of them was proved by India through evidences. So this was their lacuna. However, you see, there has been an international cry that, well, Afghanistan and Pakistan and you see these kinds of countries have this kind of a background. And so, yes, there is a fear that they might try to do their best to convince the major capitals of the world about this aspect. Nevertheless, you see, the point is that, and yes, I would like to also underline this point, that Pakistan must do its best. The Pakistani delegation to be sent in various places must be quickened up, because the Indian delegation already has started its journey. So they are a little ahead than Pakistan. Well, Pakistan's position, its prestige in security and in land and air power, has even in the naval power, because Indian Navy couldn't dare to come near to the Pakistani waters. But at the same time, you see, we have to be preparing ourselves very, very strongly, legally and politically otherwise, to counter the Indian propaganda. Number two, that on the Indus Basin Treaty, and I'm hopeful that Pakistani delegation would And because the whole of the world had been asking for the evidence to by India, which in this case particularly, and in the others as well, except one case which had happened in Mumbai some years back. But the point is that you have to be on your feet, and this strong point is in favor of Pakistan. That why, when the whole of the world just recently for the last 14 days or so, or more or less, was asking for evidence, Pakistan stated very clearly, the Prime Minister and the rest of the authorities, that okay, that hold a impartial inquiry. So that was the test of the litmus test on which India utterly failed. So the point is, now on the Indus Basin Treaty, Pakistan's case is very, very strong, because this comes under now even the human right. I mean, stopping water of so many people of Pakistan. So this has never happened, even between those countries where written treaty is not there about sharing the water, and it's just verbally concluded over the years. They have never dared to do this, because water is life for the people and agriculture and economy. So I think that there they
Life
would
and
watch. Yes.
right, right. Fair enough. Let me come back to you on that note. Dr. Jamil, Dr. Adnan is very rightly saying that water is life. So of course, in that sense, then this is a thought out strategy by India, and do you think that it's going to be, this is also of course water terrorism, and of course as far as Pakistan is concerned, we've also said that we will react to this. Do you think there's going to be a stepping back? Do you think what kind of a solution do we expect when these kind of statements are being made between Pakistan and India at this time?
Made it very clear, and that too within the boundaries of the international legal framework. They have made it very clear that water is life, and we would not like to lose our life, and we would then, in that case, take it as the declaration of war. So, what else? What clarity could Pakistan give about this Indus Water Treaty and the unilateral, illegal decision of India on the Indus Water Treaty? We have discussed it several times that there is no such provision. One. Second, if someone wants to really walk away from this treaty, in this case India, then there has to be another treaty to really negate that. And that's true with the consultation of both the countries. There are international laws, Helsinki law is there, the United Nations Water Courses law is there, and then more importantly, Indus Water Treaty, which has sustained
With due
all kind of
respect, with due respect, India seems to be flouting those international laws even as we speak. The termination itself is against the international law, what they've done.
if any member country flouts the law, the other member country, which has declared already and which has already announced that this would be a declaration of war, and several times our leadership has already said, it is quite natural, and it's quite natural that if people would not like to die of deprivation of water, so what would happen? Is the world prepared for a major, full-blown, full-spectrum war between two nuclear countries if they keep flouting? So at some stage, sooner than later, if that stage arises, first of all, it will take India about 30 years. But 30 years in the history of nations is nothing. But it will take about 30 years, as their own expert, Iftikhar Durambo, he has written a beautiful article that had justified that in case India wants to really stop water, what they have done is that they have diverted the water of the Jhelum, and they have diverted, and they are now trying to, release the water through their regulators, so that there is without sharing the data. Now, Indus Water Treaty also bounds both the countries that they would share data of each other's water level and all about the rivers, all the six rivers. So in that case, three rivers, what is there in our domain. So in that case, if they are not doing that, and if they keep flouting with that Indus Water Treaty by releasing water, even that would tend to amount to taking this matter to the United Nations. And if nothing happens, and if it starts causing havoc and damage through the flood, till the time they make all the dams in 30 years and stop water completely, but even in between, they can create this problem for Pakistan, and in that case, Pakistan would have the right, for the self-defense, and under Article 51 of the United Nations, they can, revert back by force. So in my view, and even the analysts, they are of the view that the world cannot really afford that, because we are absolutely justified, and we would be absolutely within the domain of international law if we take any action against India, which is violating this Indus Water Treaty. But in my view, I think this matter would be settled sooner than later, because the world cannot afford any of it. There are so many precedents of that kind. The world has witnessed war on account of water, upper riparian, depriving the water of the lower riparian in the face of all the international laws. So that cannot be affordable by the world community. And therefore, Pakistan, since it has made its point very clear, then we will have no option but to break those dams and but to destroy those regulators which cause trouble to us. Yes.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Dr. Adnan. Dr. Adnan, at this time, even what Jamil is saying, that of course what the options that we have as a nuclear nation, are before us. Even domestic warfare, we've clearly shown our prowess in that regard. But overall, at this time, there is a pause to what, of course, is seen as a conflict, and there's a kind of cold peace, and kind of threat remains overall over the region. Do you expect it to dissipate sooner? Do you think that, even when the delegations, Pakistani and Indian, are going to go out into the world to tell their story, what do you expect in terms of, like you said, de-escalation is in progress? Then that de-escalation would necessitate India's thawing over the Indus Water Treaty also, right?
Yes, as I already have also expressed my considered views on this point, that de-escalation is the only option. In fact, you see, in the just 4 days of war, it has had a telling effect on India mostly, and a little disturbance in Pakistan as well. Though Pakistan defended itself wonderfully and did come in their trap of the projectile, and there is though a fact of the matter, and has been written in the military history of the world, I would say. But at the same time, you see, India, I think, cannot afford to have a re-escalation, if I would term it, again, because it has to be with good terms with many countries of the world, including on the top of it, United States.
Even so, we are also looking at, of course, like you are saying, yes, it can't afford all of that. But then we are also looking at a very recent Khuzdar attack that happened in Balochistan. So the kind of terrorism that we're looking at, that perpetrates from the Indian region, from across the border, is still continuing, right?
Very intelligent of you, Ms. Mahrukh, and you have really pointed out this at the appropriate time. So this is what India would be able to do at the most. The proxy of India in Balochistan and even in Afghanistan, sorry to say, though it's a brotherly Islamic country. But anyway, let's hope that this trilateral meeting of Pakistani Foreign Minister and the Afghan at China Beijing just a few days ago would work quite well. However, you see, I think that those well-established networks of terrorists here in Balochistan particularly, and in the rest of the places as well, KP as well, they would keep on, in fact, increasing that So directly, I don't think so. They would not be that mad that they would again confront Pakistan, which has beaten them severely. But yes, this is a very and Hosdar attack, you see, and many more may, God forbid, be coming. So I would therefore say that national consensus ought to be built across the political parties over and above their political views to give go ahead for a decisive action and not just the ones based on IBOs, but something very massive. I think government is bullying about that, and this is the only way. They are not that much, but you see, unfortunately, Ms. Mahrukh, the point is that when this kind of an action is taken by the security forces here in Pakistan, some of the ultra-nationalist people, political parties, they start harping on the tone of human rights. Human rights of whom? Human rights of the terrorists? But what about the human rights of those parents and children who get killed? Aren't they human beings? So you see, I think that Pakistan would have to be working on two tracks. Number one, to meet external enemy wherever you see it has any small kind of a chance even to be flaring up. And secondly, inside. The inside enemy is actually a little invisible, quite invisible. So they are in ordinary civilian guys, and they are now hitting these soft targets. Children, women, old and sick. So this is most condemnable, and I think most of the world also will be now knowing very clearly that what is all this to do with the circumstance. India is there. Unfortunately, we would not name Afghanistan because we want to repair. It's a brotherly Islamic country. Let's hope it's never too late. Though we have not been satisfied with its conduct, and hope that India would not make its way into Afghanistan soil to do some great problem for Pakistan, to be hitting Pakistan there from the proxy side. So this is, nation has to be clearly coming up, and they should have one voice that if these terrorists are given, then they start also, unfortunately, if they are captured or they themselves go out and disappear, they say, where are the missing persons? So missing persons are those who leave their houses for fighting the security forces unsuccessfully though. So therefore, I would say that in this case, India's most lethal weapon, and I am sure that God would save us from that, would be these proxies.
Right, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Please stay with us, Dr. Adnan. We also have with us Jauhar Saleem, former Foreign Secretary. Thank you for being with us. Jauhar Sahib, if you heard what Dr. Adnan is saying, he's talking about a national consensus. As far as, where we are at this time with India, there seems to be, by and large, national consensus on, the kind of terrorism and our response and all of that. As far as these, Khuzdar attack is concerned, what do you see in the future? Do you see, unfortunately, that involvement has continued, and I think Dr. Adnan also mentioned that for a while now. Do you see us, more kinetic operations? What do you perceive now? Of course, as far as Pakistan is concerned, as far as the National Action Plan is concerned, in terms of our step forward and how we perceive to deal with a neighbor like India.
What we're facing it's an era of hybrid warfare, fifth generation warfare, as they say. So unfortunately, India has been employing the proxies for a long time now, and very much in keeping with the so-called offensive defense doctrine of Ajit Doval, which was enunciated multiple times. And in fact, very clearly, he had mentioned that India would use the proxy organizations, basically meaning thereby the terrorist organizations, for making Pakistan bleed. I'm using his words. And he's on record having said that okay, Pakistan can do one Mumbai. That was an accusation, but we'll make them lose Balochistan. See, so they're on record having said that. So we've been facing that. But the strategy that we need in response to that needs to be holistic. Kinetic actions have to be one part of the strategy, an important part of the strategy, of course. For counterterrorism, you need those operations. You need even better intelligence. You need to incorporate the most modern technology, which we've seen. Sort of, for instance, the Israelis, the type of technology they have employed in their intelligence operation, it's state of the art. Then again, it's also because like what the enemy does is they basically they try to mislead the masses as well. People living in certain regions where they find that they have some possibility of exploitation. So it's a battle of winning the hearts and minds as well in that way. It's a battle of narratives as well. Then again, there are economic issues involved sometimes. So we have to sort of, like the creation of jobs is very important. Why? Because when you have unemployed youth, then these terrorist or extremist groups, they can always track them by sort of those convoluted ideologies or philosophies, so long as they have sort of money to spend as well. We have seen in this region there were terrorist organizations who were actually paying people better than they would get elsewhere. They were employing people and offering better salaries than they would get in public jobs or sort of other private sector jobs. So then it has to be a sort of a very comprehensive strategy, and our national action plan, it is actually a very comprehensive plan. I think the problem has been with the implementation, because the implementation, I mean, the governments have tried, but there's still a lot to be desired in that way. And for there are various sort of levels, at the provincial level, at the municipal level, at the federal government level, and sort of and we need to strengthen the institutions which are involved, sort of in the implementation of that plan. And I think we really need to focus on the narrative as well, because that is very important.
The narrative overall, in terms of course, now that we are looking at a more proactive diplomacy at this time. Let me go to Adnan Sahab, I'll come back to you. Dr. Adnan, we are also looking at a change in the pace of overall diplomacy at this time. Do you agree with this? Because of course we've seen the visits by the Deputy PM, the Prime Minister, again now the Prime Minister and his visit to these 4 countries again, to of course channelize on of course their support during this difficult time for Pakistan, but also to tell our story. We're also looking at this delegation. Do you think that this pace overall needs to continue? And the fact that perhaps it needs to be more aggressive as far as our diplomacy is concerned. It needs to be proactive rather than reactive, and that's something that Pakistan has perhaps needs to work on as far as consistency is concerned.
Yes, well, I would say that it is already proactive. It is not reactive, because Pakistan is wonderfully contacting all the, first of all, countries in the neighborhood. And the Prime Minister has just reached Istanbul, and he's going to meet the President of Turkey. However, this visit has been mostly to express the gratitude to these countries. Turkey, in addition to, of course, China is at the forefront. Turkey and Iran and Azerbaijan, a newcomer, but such a sincere and loyal friend of Pakistan. And then, of course, Dushanbe, they are going to participate, the delegation in Glaciers Conference as well. But I think that I sometimes really have no example in the recent past that Pakistan's diplomacy and contacts the highest level of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, and Mr. Tariq Fatmi is also there, Mr. Tarar is also there, was so fast and dynamic. So I think they are very well aware of all this and awake. And yes, I would agree to this, that it should not be a whirlwind visit for one time, but they must be going in different directions of the world beyond the neighborhood, like to KSA and UAE. Of course, I think they would be making such visits very soon. And Europe, etc., though you see the delegations for this purpose already have been formed. But I wish And this is one of the concerns, but I think Foreign Affairs and the government would be really taking care of that. That some legal experts of international law be there, and they should be also the ones who are good in negotiations in every group. If legal experts of international law and particularly specializing in water matters, some high-ranking officials from the Commission, Indus Basin Commission of Pakistan, so that would be a ready-made reference, legally speaking, to the capitals of the world. So I'm very sure that this time Pakistan's preparation is at the moment 100%. And yes, I agree with you that that would need to be continued for a foreseeable future at least.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Adnan. Thank you for your very valuable time. Jauhar Sahib, I'm out of time, but overall, I want to talk a little bit about Pakistan and China and the Indian and Chinese equation. They've made a lot of statements. We've also recently, I'm sure we've spoken a little bit before you about Shashi Tharoor and his statements regarding the US president and the offer of mediation and all that. We've also had statements come about the Chinese and the role of China and you know, Pakistan and China equation. Do you think there's going to be, you know, what do you see as the future of India and Chinese, India and China and their future relationship?
Well, I think that trajectory was already sort of altering in some ways ever since they had a military conflict in 1962.
Yeah.
They've had very challenging times. But then the two countries somehow resolved that they would have economic ties and stronger economic ties and sort of people-to-people contacts and sort of, you know, normalize in some ways. That was in keeping with Deng Xiaoping's vision of peace in the neighborhood. And it worked well for some time. Though they've had irritants in terms of the border skirmishes, which had been happening since sort of, you know, off and on. But overall, they have a very big trade and sort of, you know, on a lot of other sort of issues, they have generally positive interaction. Now comes suddenly the Indo-Pacific strategy of the US and the West in general. So in that strategy, India is supposed to be the counterweight of China. So suddenly, you know, now the equation has changed. It's not just sort of a regional thing anymore. It's something, it's a global dimension. It's sort of, you know, like, so this containment of China and India has become a pivotal part of that. So naturally, Chinese are not very comfortable with that. But they're still the type of country who would still, you know, not kind of let go of the trade that they have and sort of, you know, other interaction, which they think is in their benefit in terms of the sort of, you know, like, so they have kept that diplomatically, you know, they have positive relations in general. Now comes the latest episode here. What we saw, China has been the tradition and sort of, you know, like very much in line with the Pakistan-China iron friendship and the, you know, the all-weather strategic partnership that we have. They have supported Pakistan all the way.
So you're saying that that equation is unlikely to alter really?
So yeah, no, but that changes because that brings some change in the sense that, you know, now because China supported Pakistan to an extent where India thought probably like, you know, they didn't think that China would go all the way. They'll keep some sort of a balance. So that has not been the case. So I think it would, of course, you know, like now in the coming years, we might see some change in the contour of relations between India and China, not just because of the Indo-Pacific, but also because of the fact that now China and Pakistan and the use of Chinese weaponry.
Unfortunately. Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jauhar Saleem. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan, thank you with us. Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, thank you for joining us. Of course, Pakistan remains committed and, you know, of course, the proactive diplomacy at play is certainly for the world to see. We're putting our narrative forward and, of course, we see every day how Indian narrative, Indian voice is itself defeating. It's self-defeating. It's also self-incriminating in a lot of instances. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.